What did I teach you?
You are Duke of New York. You're a number one.
I can't hear you.
You are the Duke of New York. You're a number one.
Peace, everybody. Can everybody hear me? If so, please type it into the chat. I hear no delay or nothing, right? Excellent. Hope everybody's well. Anybody have any questions about anything before we start? A lot of stuff going on since the fiscal new year popped off, of course. A lot of useful idiots showing themselves to be controlled, as usual. Man, anybody have any questions? Okay. If you haven't already, I mute everybody, but just in case, just make sure. And if you have any questions, just type them into the chat. Yes, I did hear about the fog. But you know, I'm old enough to remember when the movie came out that was based on the book. You know what I mean? Also, the United States Patent Office has a patent, a military patent for delivery systems being able to be initiated through fog, as well as immediate fog dispersal technology, meaning they got a thing they could just, they got a thing that they could just take out and make the fog go away. So, you know, it's really peculiar how they pick and choose how they want to do stuff. Another question. In St. Louis, the heart of the winter storm, 7 inches of ice and snow that crumbles in your hand and doesn't foam up. Exactly. Because, you know, winter as a concept is basically being phased out, or the elements or the places where winter is prominent are not as prolific as they were. So that doesn't mean everything is melting. It just means that it's not, things are moving more towards a more hotter existence, because the consciousness level of the magnetic field and the people involved in it is rising to the point that, to the point to match the vibrational pattern of everybody that allegedly is waking up. Which means that the more you see people acting stupid and crazy on the internet, the more in the real world, that is probably the opposite. That's just the people within that realm that are chosen to exhibit that behavior, to make us think that that's the majority of humans, which is the trick of social media, to make us believe that what we see on social media represents the majority of humanity, and it doesn't. It represents those people who are caught up in social media, because if you have no connection to it, and let's say if you're not on one of those apps as an active participant user, you don't exist in that realm. And then, like I said, this is going back to what I was saying in last week's class in terms of the local reality. The localized reality is not a fixed position. So just like free radicals exist in a state that can do mad different things, but the minute that you focus on them, they immediately change or stop their their movement. That means then that there is a certain aspect of physical sight that once seen slows down everything. So basically everything that we see is already happened. You understand? By the time we focus in on it. But when we close our eyes and we're in the black, anything is possible to manifest. You understand? So that understanding of reality is how they have been manipulating it for so long without us really understanding that when we think of things like times and seasons, like seasons, when you say seasons, you're saying time. When you say galaxy, you're saying dimension. Like they're all, when you say an alien, you're saying demon. It's basically the same thing. So what has also been happening that they're not telling you is because they want you to always believe that the tech billionaires and the tech people is making all the money. Another thing that's happening is to manipulate this is that once they started getting into financing, there was a thing called the PayPal Mafia. And all of these tech people that created what would be all of the apps that would be used on the Apple platform or on the digital platform to be downloaded and used as an everyday application, these things were already mapped out by this so-called mafia. One of the dons in it was a dude named Elon Musk. And him and a couple of other people that set up other apps that everybody uses. So that way, once Steve Jobs was gone, they could then flood the whole market with the apps, and then they could always make money by updating apps. You understand? So in that, they started to produce a lot of technology because they needed more data processing material due to the NSA now entering into all of the things that Snowden told us about and ushering in the surveillance state that then led to the destruction of privacy. So they are creating a substrata. They created a sub unit when now cybersecurity was now a different type of security. So all of this created different money markets that allowed them to market these security encryption type protocols to these burgeoning companies that now people seen as the new gold rush. So all the venture capitalists niggas start putting all of their money into this stuff. But but people like McAfee and these people was already ahead of them. So when he created malware, he already created the software to be able to go into their stuff once they use the malware to get rid of the viruses that their computers automatically were installed with when they bought them from the initial either the Microsoft systems and all of that. So all of that's to say that all of that created the need for them to create bigger and better computers that would process data in a manner and hold all of this data in a manner that they could then use for energy. You understand what I'm saying? They wanted to use this for an energy thing, for energy manipulation scheme. You understand? So in them doing that, that allowed them to finally function on the level that they could use. You know what I mean? And ultimately benefit from. So that then led them to the present structure to create what they call quantum supremacy, where they would be able to create computers that could basically quantify zeros and ones into a higher binary language, right? But these quantum computers, so everybody's like quantum computers. So the idea of the quantum computer was that basically it could think about what you wanted before you typed it. So once you typed it in, it already is producing what you want to see. Okay, so you're talking now about fourth dimensional technology, which technically is impossible for a third dimensional entity to interface with it in a three-dimensional space. So it can only be described in a non-physical form. Everybody understand what I'm saying? Okay, so as that, they needed to create a better way of computing all of this, right? So this is where the quantum computer gold rush came, and now everybody put all of this money into these giant quantum computers. Okay, so what the quantum computer could do is that it can create a simultaneous reaction in the probability matrix through entanglement. So what that means is like one qubit is like 0 or 1. or like binary languages like 0 or 1, right? But with a qubit, right, they can split that. You understand? That can be split, with meaning that both can exist simultaneously. So with one qubit of information, you can have both a 0 and a 1 in terms of the data consumption, how much you can think, because it exists in both states at once. So this is basically how free radicals existed, right? But the thing is, like I said, once you look at it, it automatically changes or goes inert or goes into a different direction. But in any event, they can compute this stuff. But this is not good. This is dope for extrapolation calculations, but on an everyday like level, like you can't. This is not good for like a desktop. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? So what's happening is that people are starting to realize, the venture capitalists are starting to realize that a lot of this stuff that they are doing or that they have, right, with this is it's like a money pit. You know what I mean? Like they putting a lot of bread into this to produce these greater outputs, when all they can really say at the end of it all, or to justify all of this money going into this, is, oh, this thing can compute in a manner that's a little more faster than this other thing, and that the numbers, you know what I mean, can basically be manipulated in a different reality. Like I told you the other day, the qubit, the computer that Google was dealing with, saying how it had to pull computation probabilities from parallel dimensions. You see what I'm saying? So what that's basically saying, one is committing to the idea that one parallel dimensions exist, right? Which then justify multiversal travel, right? Like look at the shape of what I'm talking about, and then look at how that relates to what we have already been trained to understand this concept through. So the same way that we understood teleportation in Star Trek, right? The same way we could basically plausibly accept, without breaking the fourth wall in the story, that people could disappear in one thing and then go in a box and then reappear in another, means that there's some sort of there's some sort of memory or some sort of situation that existed or that exists for us to entertain that could be even a possibility. So what that also shows is a precognitive um, um, infusion to get us to understand the idea of quantum entanglement, right? So this is also how the enemy is there to educate us, right? And try to get us, oh, quantum computer, that's the future, and that's this, that's that. But in the end, like, what can you really do with it? What are you really doing with it to benefit everybody, anybody, other than looking into ways to create numbers that may not exist? You know what I mean? Like a basic Commodore computer was better than that. You know what I'm saying? And that shit couldn't do nothing. You know what I mean? That's even before like dial up and shit like that. So, and again, I'm not even a computer person. I'm just saying that this is why so many scenarios are being thrown at us at one time right now, because you have multiple situations, multiple agendas being fulfilled by different members of the decaying oligarchy. You understand? They have fully screwed the pooch on basically everything. They don't have the ability to maintain the control like they used to. Now, when I say they, I'm not necessarily talking about elements of the United States government, because the United States government, as we understand it now, that is basically a adjunct military wing for whatever agenda or policy is coming out of Washington, specifically DC at the time. And DC, we know, is run by the state of Israel, or is so involved with it that it doesn't have the ability to stand on its own and even deny it. The fact is, if you have so many people who are part of another country, and then you give them access to your government, to the point now where people who are not a part of that, they who elected these people from this country, their needs are no longer the premier need. The need is the people who they are dual citizenship with. So what you have then is a puppet government. But we got to go back to, well, who set all of that up? You know what I mean? Who set Israel and all of that up? So the thing is, the present state of Israel was set up by people like Charles Herschel, right? And another dude named Russell, right? Before we even get to Balfour and them people, we speak about Russell and them people, them dudes set it up with the perspective that they weren't even religious. They were Jews in the concept that they were calling themselves that, but they were non-religious. So they didn't even believe in no Yahweh and none of that. But because they Jews, they want their people to have the right to take the land that God said belonged to them. So think about what I just told you. I just told you that the non-religious dude, the dude who said that he was not religious, he did not believe in God or Yahweh, none of that. He was now lobbying to get his people, who he called the chosen people of God, their own state. Think about that. On your right is an image from an old CIA document that's now public on the internet, referring to the cosmic egg, or how their documentation and their studies basically showed how the universe exists. So this right here is a toroidal sphere, right? Or what they call the great mushroom, right? This also is the symbol, like if you look, like when you look at the mushroom cloud when it goes off, basically saying that this is how it works. And that basically we live in this part of the game. And what the occultists, the Kabbalists, these people refer to as Malkuth, right? The material realm. And in this material realm, there is basically the realm of matter and time, and then is thus manifested through light, which are photons. So this on your left hand side is the first alleged ever taken picture of a photon, right? So everything is a reflection of the thing that is being reflected. So physical reality, the illusion, the hologram, whatever we want to call it, is still a manifestation of the collective reality that we share, you know what I'm saying, with everything and everybody around us. This is another version from the CIA book that they had of it, how it looked, right? It's another version of it on your left. On your right is one of the seals from the seven books of Solomon, and you see how the world is encased in the Ouroboros, and how the Ouroboros represents the each different levels. And when you hear about the story of Atlantis, how it had the gates before you get to it, this is also how the pineal organ is situated. But then what you also see is the two reflections. Remember I said what I showed you in the middle with the toroidal field, where you have the joint in the middle, and then you have the two reflections of it that exist simultaneously. You see what I'm saying? This is why Janus is seen as the new year to these people, because it has two faces. Janus, Januarius, um, Janus, the two-faced god, Two-Face and Batman. That's the Jekyll and Hyde, the duality of truth and lie. All of that goes into that. Just like you see in the toroidal field, there's never one wave. There's a group of waves functioning into different hemispheres, each with its own frequency, each with its own vibration, each with its own light sphere. And this thing encompasses all of us. Every photon atom in us has a toroidal field around it, moving simultaneously, that move at such a level that keeps us and keeps us being able to exist. That's why I say everything is vibration, everything is frequency. So if the frequency of something can be matched to such a degree that you can vibrationally attune with it, both in certain instances can exist simultaneously. So like when you see the woman who sings to the level of the octave, and she sings so high that the glass breaks. Not every glass breaks, right? But the one in her vicinity will break because she's reached the vibrational frequency of that glass. You see what I'm saying? And her consistent level of vibratorial frequency on that level can't allow that glass to exist at the same level that it has, because it's now taking its place. Remember, I tell you, nature abhors a void. So it's going to fill up whatever. And it doesn't care. You know what I'm saying? So this is, like I said, the technology that these things been using for so long for us, getting caught up with them, striving to unify us or put us in a structural period to entertain what they say we are based upon our lack of direct knowledge. You know what I'm saying? Which is always verifiable or brought to us from somebody trying to tell us who we are, right? And then once these names or these nomenclatures are accepted, now our frequency is now like on a vibration with theirs, right? And now we got to go by what we say we have anchored ourselves with these people. So like when you hear brothers and sisters call themselves Native Americans, well, what Native American are you talking about? Because the Native American is a member of the Native American Party, right? Which was established in 1884, which is really 884, and who call themselves Native Americans. The projects is the counter group, which was set up to counteract the growth of the Irish influence in the Americas. They declare themselves to be Native Americans, meaning to advocate to repeal all naturalization laws and none but American born citizens to office. See that? The Native Americans and the Republicans flattered themselves, and the Democratic Party had been reduced to a mere association. See, they always been banging on the Democrats, trying to push some crazy socialist shit based upon people's disenfranchisement. But sometimes the people's disenfranchisement came for them not understanding how the laws in themselves had been construed based upon their position in it, whether they were, how do you say, had a nationality or not, right? Then you got the ones that associate. So in that, then I'm telling you, then that Native American has no association with Indian, because the people that set up the Native American Party themselves weren't even from here. So that's not a good look per se. And the first Native American Party again was set up by a Jewish man named Levinson. Right? And it says Indian title, claim of Indian tribes' right because of the immemorial occupancy to occupy certain territorial exclusion to any other Indians. Northwestern bands of Shoshone Indians, boom, boom, permissive right of occupancy granted by the federal government to Aboriginal possessors of the land. It is mere possession, not specifically recognized as ownership, because they couldn't be recognized as ownership. The Indians that these people talking about going to with their Indian title and Indian property were recognized as that once they submitted to the jurisdiction of the federal government, who then recognized them as Indians and then brought them in as a pseudo tax burden that they could justify and then use to basically as scouts to get rid of the rest of us in the cities that wasn't going to leave. but they were never given a possessive ownership, right? Recognized as ownership and may be extinguished by the federal government at any time. Now, this is being challenged through the present situation that's happening in Governor in Oklahoma, with all of the land that was allegedly ceded back to the tribal governments, right? However, if those tribal governments themselves are not real tribal governments, then how can anything be ceded back to them? So this is the time now when those of y'all that's out there that's calling yourselves this and that, like especially like the Tulsas, all of that, like this is when y'all supposed to be going up and basically carving out your own territory within that area if you are claiming this Indian thing is working the way that you say it is. But we'll see. Yes, like Butcher from the gangs of New York. Yes, he was a nativist. He was a Native American. He did. This nigga Butcher in the gangs of New York, that was what a Native American was like. See what I'm saying? And they were there to try to back up the national flag because they were veterans of the original war, of the Great War, in which they fought for their freedom against those dirty Moors that was married up and booed up with the Europeans. We'll get into in a second. Now that they was free, they'd be damned if they brought other people up. If they brought other people up now, the so-called Irish, who themselves, if they go back on the genetic line, it's going to take them all the way back now to the whole Israelite, Danite collusion situation. You see, they then started to split them up too. You know what I mean? So that's why that's crazy. So then you got the modern versions of that, you know, that which was issued or instituted under the what do you call it? The Jackson regime, right? Wait 1 second. So these things have no juristic power outside of you basically claiming a benefit based on your deficit. That's why these terms that they be giving us to associate with don't always have our best interests in mind, or we don't really understand what the words mean, you know, or when we allow ourselves to be labeled by these individuals, you know, it becomes a problem. For instance, so we already went into Indian, so that's crazy. You know what I mean? They already got you as the Indian. Now they then try to get you as a damn, where is it? I'm sorry, guys. Give me 1 second. Yeah, my bad. So they'll call you an Indian, right? But we already know that that would then mean that you're connected to the Indus, which would then mean that you were Asiatic, which then mean that you're connected to the pre-colonial world, right? Which then means that you are part of uh, the pre-cataclysm world, right? And those people who ruled that era were people that look like us, but of course they were deposed. So nowadays that they've been put under these false slave labels, then you got people creating their own versions of these labels to get the people to put themselves under. You know what I mean? So like I said, under the civil rights era Jesse Jackson regime and through TV shows, mainly like Cosby Show and Family Matters and all of these shows. We grew up then adopting this pseudo joint when the very organization that Jesse Jackson himself created, which or allegedly created, which was what the Rainbow Coalition in its infancy had nothing to do with with bringing all of these other different racial groups together. It was started as an original so-called indigenous American, indigenous so-called Black American, i.e. American Indian, i.e. Moorish forest culture group. So a bunch of melanated Shinnecocks, melanated Cherokees, melanated Anahuas, melanated Panahaswas, whatever, they all got together and they had their organization fighting for their own rights. Then there was another group that saw them that were the youth of the Siberian type, Native American types that grew up believing this, and that, and then found out what was really going on through their connections through these groups, right? And then they formed their own group called ARM, in which then they started trying to take over their reservations and stuff like that, and started calling out all of the Freemason chiefs that was keeping their people drunk and on drugs and all that other type of shit. This is all was happening between the late 60s and the mid 80s. And then that's when the United States government started going in and shutting all of them niggas down and locking all of them up, the same way they did with the Panthers, right? So again, this is registered. This is a registered trademark, right? The dude that I saw it registered to was a dude named Charles M. Young, whoever that is. People should look him up. Then this is the new version of this, which is now, foundational Black American. Now I know what a foundational Black American is supposed to be, because I know I have supporters who are a part of that and all of that, and they know my stance on it. I'm not against anybody believing that they're the foundation of so-called Black America, if that's what you want to refer to it as. I'm down with that. My problem is that you can't. I don't know if y'all going to turn into a political party, and if so, who's the trademark owner of it? Because then that'll say a lot as to how far and where it's going to go. You dig? But neither one of these represent the image in the middle. You know what I'm saying? Neither one. So this is the problem with the present paradigm of so-called consciousness. Now that it's been broken up, like the conscious community, as we understand it, that has already been kind of like, I won't say co-opted. It's just, if it ever existed in the first place, it really existed in the infancy and when it was in people's homes and you know what I mean. I remember being received by people in their house, like doing whole lectures in people's basement, like, you know what I mean. You can't do that no more. You know what I mean? Because a lot of circumstances have changed, and unfortunately, a lot of people are caught up in the brainwashing and circumstances of that change. Because, like I said, they allowed themselves, or we've allowed ourselves, to be put under false designations that then negate our imagination, or to break outside of the present box that these things represent for us. Because now that they're entrenched schools of thought, you're going to have people within 10, 15 years who will be saying that foundational Black American, for instance, just using that as an example, because before that it was like a descendant of slaves, right? Which was even less descriptive and not ethnically identifiable to specifically melanated people, but whatever. All of that is to say that now will create another bone of contention, another identity for people to have to stand up and defy and stand up for, and all of that. Just like people who practice Kwanzaa, like you could practice Kwanzaa, you know, it's cool, but it's maladaptive to practice a harvest ritual during the time of that isn't during the time of harvest. You understand? Like it's kind of crazy in that way, but people don't think so. And the guy that created it, let's keep it real, killed a couple of melanated people himself, and himself was a part of the CIA. You know what I mean? Like you have active operations, like I said, going on simultaneously to constantly denationalize and demoralize melanated people, specifically the melanated Americans, the Asiatic, the Moors, the Moorish Americans. Them, they wanna, the ones born from the soil here. It's us, because we represent, again, this dude in the middle. You see, he got the same necklace T'Challa got on, because we know Wakanda and all of that stuff as a real place, not a fictional place, but a real place. The land of the golden jaguar. That's over here. Yeah, like the same people who was beefing about black people not having a chance to do nothing are now the same people beefing that black people are going to be, the black marching band is going to be the marching band to bring Trump in the game, bring Trump back in the office. Like what? He is putting these people, giving these people money to do something that he don't even have to do. He don't even got to use them if he don't want. And again, it's not about him more than it's about the situation. This is the nigga who gave all of the money, was trying to set up the perpetual money for the HSBCUs, but this nigga, the next nigga came in, shut all of that down. Now he coming back in trying to reestablish it all, because all of that got shut down during Biden. So again, they have mastered the ability to shut people and cut people off from their own interests. It's amazing. Brother Heru said, aha, moment. Being that jaguar is a sacred animal of the Olmeca, Balaam is a Spanish word of jaguar. So Balaam, jaguar is Baal. Yeah, Bay at Al, or Il and Bay, or the Bays and L's, right? Which then is different from the actual stone idol now Baal that is now created out of the names of these people that then become the storm and the sacrificial gods that they be worshiping. So yeah, it all comes from that. But this is also, I think, why they trying to demasculinize Jaguar, the actual car company, and turn it into a woke situation as another ritual breaking down so-called America. But this is another version of what I'm saying. Like they've been doing all of this Attis worship, all of this gender flipping worship, all of this shit. Like they've been doing this stuff. You understand? But you gotta understand that now that the pattern recognition has become part of the global, or specifically the American populace's psyche, this is now harder for them to explain. How is it that you get all three of these so-called black, so-called Republican terrorists, right? But all three of these niggas all was in Fort Bragg. What are they doing in Fort Bragg to activate these niggas? That's the question. What type of war game is going on at this one military base that's doing that? They're not going to get into that. But you know what's funny is that let me get it. Yeah, how is it that all three of these dudes, like how, like it's beyond coincidence now. Now this is a full out op that is now so obvious that they don't even feel they got to hide it the right way, because they got a bunch of people who believe that they're a bunch of different things, so they can, while people are debating on whether or not they're this or they're that or whatever, they can just run this op on niggas. And they right. And they right. They can do it. Because people have become so used to all of this being rigged that there's a certain apathy, because it's almost like, well, if it's this bad, like what can we do to stop it? Like there's nothing I can do as an individual. Yeah, there is. You can talk to real people that you trust about what you see happening and utilize what you can do in the meantime, which is making sure that your uh understanding of what's going on is as clear as possible, so that way you can add on as a how do you say, voice of reason to all of this madness. Because all military bases, as you know, are built on top of burial grounds of the people who they fought in the last conflict. So whoever got murked in the last conflict, they create a bunch of bodies. They create the mounds or whatever, and those bodies become the foundation for the new structure. So yes, Fort Bragg, now called what? Fort Liberty, is built on land that was previously a burial ground containing the remains of who? Native Americans, including a site known as McLean Mound, which held hundreds of burials. See? As well as the graves of local families who lived in the areas before the military installation was built. Some of these cemeteries are still present on the base and are preserved as historical sites. See that? The large mound is considered one of the most significant archaeological sites on Fort Bragg land. So what I'm telling you is that Fort Bragg itself is built on a original mound from the original people that was there. Now look up where Fort Bragg is in, excuse me, it's in North Carolina. What are they doing in North Carolina right now? They're trying to wash North Carolina out because they need all of the lithium. Right? So they're trying to shut all of that down. But they doing all of that through what? Through Fort Bragg, because that's where all of these sleepers is coming from. And the thing is, most of these niggas, these two niggas was Trump supporters. But these dudes are being radicalized. Like I told you about the qubits. They trying to create every find that they make scientifically, they try to apply materially. So they're trying to take this person and put him in two states at once. So he's a regular person here, but then he's away with the military. He got a whole nother existence. And they have altars that they activate in these niggas, but these niggas don't even remember the shit they do when they on the base. So he probably didn't even remember until he was activated, based on whatever activated him. These programs have never stopped. They said that they did, but they obviously haven't. And the fact that nobody in government TV, nobody is drawing the correlation except the actual people, right? People, us on the outside, we're the ones doing it. So not only was Fort Bragg built on the bodies of all of the slaves that died in the conflict, who were the Native Americans, right? It's made up also significant archaeological sites from all of the mound builders and stuff that we had done prior to them even getting here. So that's basically 3, 4 different cemeteries, 5 different cemeteries in the same cemetery. And you know the law of the cemetery is, if you got a loved one and you bury them in your crib, they can never take the crib from you. That's why they created goddamn cemeteries and these things in the beginning to begin with, because this is how they could be themselves be legal grave robbers and find ways into taking over people's property. So the attack on the body, like I said, that is happening incrementally on the people and all of that is always symbolic of what these devils are trying to do. And because the United States Congress is perpetually blackmailed by informational agents such as Epstein's and CIA assets like Puffy's and these types of people, basically all of the mechanisms of public interface are connected by to the same hydra. So all of these companies are the same damn company at this point. So they are all aligned, you see what I'm saying, to create perpetual control over the people themselves through incrementalism, right? But the people support it by breaking themselves up into the different groups, the various groups that allow them to be manipulated. Like, for instance, you want to make perpetual money and you want to invest, look into companies that produce helium, and you'll find that they make consistent money. Why? Because the biggest consumer of helium on the planet, on the entire planet, is NASA. Hear what I'm telling you. You can look it up. The biggest producer, consumer of helium on the planet is NASA. Never a straight answer. Not a space agency. Right? Why? Because they have to stick the helium to the satellites to raise them into the air. Because there's no satellites hurtling in space. That's fake. It's not real. All of the telecommunications travel through cables under the ground and underwater. So most of the hacking and shit is being done via the satellites or by breaking into these cables, which are all military type situations that are activated by IT specialists, which all three of these niggas were. That all came from the cemetery base, aka Fort Bragg, aka now Fort Liberty. So that's a joke, right? Um, right before this dude get in. Because everything is being manipulated by the same people who've been manipulating everything from the beginning. It's just now everything is catching up to them. Everything that they're doing in the present state of Israel is to eventually try to reestablish this thing. This is how they perceived one of the old drawings of the Temple of Solomon. This is what they have set themselves up to recreate, because this was the grand theater that first allowed them to take control of the so-called people who today you refer to as Israelites or Jews. People did not refer to the original Israelites or the people ones that originally left Egypt and all of that as Jews until after the Babylonian occupation, in which then the Babylonians, after they conquered them, asked them, well, what do you call yourselves? We are the descendants of the house of Judah, of Yehuda. And so the Babylonians began to refer to them as Jews. And then once those Jews, who were the old Pharisees, instituted themselves under the Babylonian rule, they quickly found common ground with the piece of shit pagan priests and idolaters in Babylon, and then worked with them to create something called the Talmud, that they then could be their secret thing that they would then use to maintain all of this old so-called antediluvian magical systems that would allow them to manipulate time and shit like that in the future. So then after the Babylonian captivity, when they went back to these different places, now they're going back with this new version of what they're doing. So everybody else that's calling themselves Jews technically is dealing with the Torah, right? Or they're Israelites now because they're now the accepting the new covenant through worship of Christ, right? But then within that, under that, you got these Jews that are working then to basically create or recreate what they see as the temple, which itself is a giant altar to this God. You understand? So when they say Jew is not a nationality, technically it's not. It's not really even an ethnicity. It started out for a group of people, and then those group of people violated their charter, and then another group of people that they begat then were able to reestablish that charter, right? And then move forward to a certain point, and then they again broke their covenant, and then their whole thing was shattered again. Then the kingdom was split into two, right? And then this is the story that they say, at least. So this is what they all striving to recreate, right? But in reality, Temple of Solomon is the actual physical body, which is the actual church in which the new covenant was supposed to be based on. Thus, the kingdom of heaven being within and Allah dwelling in the heart. They don't subscribe to that because they know that that's not something that they were ever a part of. So what they did was work to physically create a pageantry system that would allow them to recreate all of the things that they had bonded themselves to by accepting that this new book was going to be the book of ages that all other civilizations would then come to use to either their benefit or their detriment. Okay? And so a lot of the Kabbalistic elements and photonic light transducial technology that had been left over from the last cataclysm, for lack of a better word, then went into that. And so now they had to go into their history and now recreate themselves as something else. And then use whatever that religion was going to be as the new face for the old shit that they've been doing. So you hear Jews refer to the Holocaust, right? They say that they went through the Holocaust. Okay. What, on a basic tip, what do you think Holocaust mean? It means something bad, you know, something bad happening and all that, right? In vulgar, yes, it does. But when somebody from who is a Talmud follower or a Torah follower, they know that it means the opposite. It means a Holocaust is a religious animal sacrifice that is completely consumed by fire, also known as what? The burnt offering. Lutherans do burnt offerings. I think some Episcopalians do burnt offerings, or at least sing about have done them. The word derives from the ancient Greek holocaustos, right? The form of sacrifice in which the victim was reduced to ash, right? Distinguished from an animal sacrifice, resulted in a communal meal. Didn't they have restaurants and didn't they have dining halls and all of that at Auschwitz and Dachau and all of the rest of these places where they allegedly was doing this stuff at? Yes. Yes. And they have the ovens and all of that? Yes. Who built the ovens? Krupps. Who made the uniforms? Hugo Boss. Who created the computer encryption systems? IBM. Who created the railroads? Rockefeller. Who brought the gas? Who brought the gas for the niggas? Standard Oil. Who helped with the manageability, the maneuverability? Then who paid for the trucks and the tanks? Henry Ford. You understand? Who blessed the bombs? Pope Paul, Pope John Paul, right? See what I'm saying? Yet none of these people went to jail. One of these people who helped secure the loans. Who helped secure the loans? Prescott Scherf, Prescott Bush, who went on to become CIA director, who then went on to become vice president, who then went on to become president. So I want to know, when have any of these so-called traitors that y'all talking about, that y'all been exposing all these, when have any of these niggas been brought on trial for anything? Y'all, whenever they catch one of these niggas, they always, if they do them, they do them in secret. They do them in some military tribunal somewhere where nobody can see. How does that help the rest of us restore our faith in your failing government? Because the government is there to perpetuate itself and feed on the people as its subjects. But that is not what it was set up to do. It's not set up like that for it to work like that. So if it's working like that, somebody is supposed to come in and shut that down and turn it, right, into something that is working for the people. Who are the people? Everybody that is not a part of the government. That's who the people are. When you say we the people, it's everybody that's not a part of the government. It's simple. What did the United States government do with 33 with Trafficant and them on the congressional floor? What did these niggas do? These niggas created a how you say it, a statute in it that said that only that the federal citizens themselves were the citizens, and that everybody that is not a federal system is basically an enemy combatant to the United States. They even listed on some document, I'm gonna try to find it, United States listed as a battleground. They try to list it as abandoned, all while taking everybody money, and everybody cool with it. That's all I'm saying. Let's stop acting like everybody's who's cool with this. Cause like I said, boy, everybody, all these groups, they all down with it together, bro. Because they all got the same origin. They all coming from the same situation. And the Holocaust, again, the burnt offering is what was done to us in terms of real humanity in their quest to reestablish what they refer to as, again, the New Jerusalem, that they themselves have no direct connection to. You heard? Have no direct connection to at all. All they have is what they say belongs to them based upon what they claim to be now. Based on what they claim to be now, not what they are. Because what they are Russian Germans, Russo Germans, basically. But their goal, like I said, is to do this. But to do this, they have to conquer every nation around them. So the last one to fall, Syria just fell. The last one to now fall is either is Iran. If Iran go, then Pakistan next. Pakistan go. India next. India go. Madagascar. You understand? It's a doppling system, all for them to extend the power of the colonial essence of what they refer to as Zionism, which is not Judaism. Judaism has nothing to do with Zionism. Zionism, again, was the nationalistic system that was perpetuated by Herzl and them, who did not believe, who were atheists, basically Satanists, who did not believe in no God, but they believed that their people had the right to take the land based on what God said to them between Judges and Deuteronomy and Judges. So a nigga who don't believe in God says that God is supposed to give these people this land, who these people are not even genetically, materially, anything connected to it. They don't even speak the original Hebrew. You see? But again, the only ally they have is the United States, and that is the Achilles heel that's destroying the United States globally. All of the messed up stuff that's happening is all happening for them, because of them. And then on top of that, the Mossad is still spying on them. They still killing their own operative, killing U.S. operatives. They still doing this because they don't trust that the intel that the U.S. is actually giving them is actually real. So they got to send their own spy forces in there to make sure that the stuff that they getting on the front end is actually real. It's insane. But again, it's statecraft, and statecraft is a form of witchcraft, and the Mossad runs everything via deception. That's their motto: war by deception. So they're really warring against the U.S. That's what they really doing, but the U.S. gonna let them do it because half of their people is got dual citizenship with them. This would never happen during the time of somebody like Jackson, somebody like McKinley, somebody like Roosevelt. Even I'm talking about the black ones. This would never happen. The Moors were profoundly versed in the occult science at Toledo, Seville, and at Salamanca, whereupon the great schools of magic. This is where all of the European thought on magic and history and alchemical practices and how to and technology all came from this era of Moorish history that they will never talk to us about. They don't even mention when they say the Arab Empire or the Ottoman, they talk about the Moors, but they're never going to actively say the Moorish Empire. When they do, they're always going to localize it only to Spain. They only going to do that. Thank God that we got books from other Moors from out the world, like I said, who were actually scholars in that and left the actual documentation for us to show and prove this foregone conclusion. Right? Yeah, they all in on it. Right? It's just whose agenda more aligns with yours. That's how you got to start. We got to start looking at it. Whose agenda allies more with what I want? That's how free people look at shit. Free people don't expect to get everything that they want. You understand? That's also being an adult. Only a child thinks that they should receive everything. That's why women be sounding crazy when you say, well, what do you deserve? Everything. Like, really? Everything? That's selfish. If you if you deserve everything, then what do I deserve? Nothing. Because that's the opposite of everything. You see what I'm saying? But this is how they've conflated the ego of the modern individual, where they don't even see that they be bugging, that they create their own prisons for themselves with the things that they say out of their own mouth. So, like we said before, when it comes to the religion of these early periods and why we went to so many successful wars over the millennia with these things is due to the fact that, like I said, these things and these people would do anything to reassociate this energy back in the world. After we've done whatever we could do to disassociate ourselves from it, here go y'all niggas bringing it back up again. So we get to a point, it's like, at what point do we stop? So remember, the definition of insanity is doing something over and over again, expecting a different result. So no matter how many people that they would do, the reason why the foundation of Wild Wild West was successful was because no matter how many people the Apache, the Comanche was doing in and trying to get rid of and kill and settlers and burn and all that, they just kept coming. They kept coming because they were a part of a genetical societal reinstitution where they was just developing these things and sending them out there. The Cabbage Patch Kids, the orphan children, the orphan trains. Remember, I told you at one point they were sending children through the mail. Where was all these children coming from? Well, these were all of the children that were left over from the Great Cataclysm, right? That had no parents, right? And then you had the other ones now that were being, like I said, genetically manipulated, produced in mass, where they was delivering them through the mail, where they was putting training storks, like you have a what do they call those pigeons? Carrier pigeon with the message. They would do that with the storks. That's why they would show us that shit in the cartoons. They was literally putting the babies in these giant storks and these albatrosses and sending them into these wastelands and then putting them to work in factories. Why you think there was no child labor laws up until the early 1900s? But again, I did videos and stuff on that. The antiquity of America. America was first settled by the Israelites. See, Indians who came from Egypt. Okay. The view of the Hebrews. America was discovered by Columbus 1492 with the colonies in 622 from Europe. The first settlement in New England was made at Plymouth with the midst of the Fertile Crescent. The Egyptians were an Ethiopian people. So they telling you exactly in the first line who was here. The original people was here. They called them Indians, but they came from so-called Egypt. So why would you call an Egyptian an Indian? And then call those Egyptian Indians, right? You then refer to them also then as Ethiopians. So they're Moors. Collectively now we're calling them Moabites, right? When he measured the Great Pyramid in Egypt and found the four sides were turned and built and steady in the four corners of the world, Europe, Asia, Africa, and America, above the 3,000 years ago, during the land of space and time, been no alteration of the poles of the earth and the meridian, so have turned to the pyramid. Yes. So see, the book of itself, of Strabo, refers to it as what? Aeonius. Remember we talked about the Aeonius or the Arius Empire has given to the substance of the dialogue which follows. And after the conversations of Selenius said to Midas that Europe, Asia, and Africa were but islands surrounded on all sides by the sea, but there was a continent situated beyond these, which was immense dimensions, even without limits, and it was inhabited by men. Moabite, member of the West. See, West Semitic people who lived in the highlands east of the Dead Sea, the West Sea of Jordan, flourished in the 9th century BC and are known through information in the Old Testament inscription. Blah blah blah. The Moabite culture is dated by scholars to the late 14th century BC. When, according to the Jewish historian Josephus in 1st century AD, they were conquered by the Babylonians. Does it sound better now? You hear it? So here's the thing. So remember when I was telling you that Rome was falling and it had this period where, like I said, the Israelites, after the whole conflict that led to the flipping of them, came from the whole Danite thing. And when the Danite thing went down and they went in, they took over a place called Laish, right? And then from Laish, which was like the trade route epicenter, they was able to reestablish themselves, and then they reestablished the whole pagan aspect of what was happening. Now, the so-called Hebrews are those so-called clans that existed and were descended from those 12 tribes, 12 sons of Yaqub. According to their story, everybody got a portion of land in what would be Israel, except for the Levites. What the Levites got was double the power of the holy breath instead of land, because they were also seen as the priest class that was supposed to maintain everything, which means that all of the clans were supposed to always provide for them. You understand? Because they were doing the spiritual work on behalf of everybody else. Okay? So these that just represented those people who were connected to that, right? And then out of those 12 sons came so-called 12 tribes. And those 12 tribes basically try to set themselves up as 12 different nations. The 13th, like I said, being Levi unofficially, but then had his portion taken, or had their portion taken, um, by the Edom and Esau and them. So you're talking about those groups that were genetically connected, right, to that bloodline. But that was not all of the people around them. People around them were still in the ancient clans and stuff that they had been in, or whatever, or evolving into whatever they were evolving into. And they weren't necessarily always down with that. You understand? So yes, you have people who were so-called Israelites, right? Or of the so-called 12 tribes of the northern and the southern kingdom, but that didn't necessarily mean that they were all down with the same thing. You understand? They wasn't always down with what the other tribes and stuff was doing, which would lead them into conflicts. And remember, they were a henotheistic society. So yes, they believed in Allah, but excuse me, they believed in their God, their main God that they had now adopted, who was a storm god that they were now going to turn into their creator God, right? And then once they did that, they then could use that as a means to now establish themselves, right, as the predominant force in the country. But their God told them they wasn't supposed to have no kingdom like that after Solomon or after David and them, due to their own iniquity. And so they refused that. And so this is when they say that the Lord sent the Babylonians or the Assyrians or the Romans or whoever else to rule over them. And that's the real reason why a lot of people believe that the so-called blacks are those people, because we have been ruled over ever since. But what I'm saying is that that time that happened is closer to us in time than we think. We're closer to 1492 than Cleopatra was to the building of the pyramids. You understand? This shit just happened, basically, is what I'm saying. That's why we still in shock. That's why everybody else in the world has a language that they can speak to one another about us, but we can't do that to them, because they've all been working against us to help disassociate us from the inheritance due to who the inheritance came from. So to get into that, we get into this. So Rome, I was watching this joint. I forget who this white guy was, but he did a real good thing while I was researching this class. Uh, I was looking up Domitian, who's one of the emperors of Rome, and then that sent me down a rabbit hole, and then I came across this dude's video. I forget this dude's video, but big up to him. But anyway, it set me off the course as to what I'm talking about now with these people, the Flavians. The Flavians, right, who were Romans, right? Now, this is just a depiction of what they say they look like. I think they was more like mulatto type, whatever, but let's just go with what they say. So these Flavians, when they came in, this became the dynasty of them, right? Versus Vespasian, then Titus, then Domitian, right? But what they did was they came in at a time when Rome itself was already waning. And so they had already been kind of like wedged between what was happening with the Asiatics up in what they call the Parthian Empire. The Parthian Empire is basically Persia, right? But the Parthians were ancient, descend from the ancient Scythians now. So now think of dark black Tartars, giant Tartars coming from the ancient times down from the steppes of Eurasia all the way down into what's now Pers or Persia or Iran. So the people that was already there, the Iranian culture that was already there, right? They was already there. Then what happens is the Sassanids come up. That's a new class now. They come up and they replace the Parthians. But it's not enough Parthians, there's not enough Sassanids to run the military. So they still got to imply the Parthians. But now the Parthians, they still want to come up. They still want to take their position back in what we're calling Iran or Persia, right? This is at the waning elements of this. So that's collapsing. The Flavians, they're collapsing, right? They're gonna adopt Christianity. The Christians now, that's the new popping shit. But like I said, the Romans are at the position where they need greater influence. So through their missionaries, they get their missionaries to start speaking to the Arabs, right? The pale disenfranchised Arabs. And then through them, they make basically like a pact. And from that is they basically go to find ways to reinstate the Roman statehood, right? Well, as the Persian nobility, right? The original Persian nobility coming from the Parthians, they're trying to reinstill that too. So they both start courting the disenfranchised classes, right? And start telling them that they're gonna inherit shit and that they're gonna be able to get it. And if they just do it the way that these people say they do it, they be able to do it. So one of these dudes is a dude named Salman, right? He's called Salman the Persian, okay? And Salman the Persian is just that. He's a Persian, right? But what people don't talk about is his influence on the religion of Islam that was brought to the idol worshippers at Medina and all that. People don't even really know he even existed like that, but they don't really talk about him. And I think it's because of his connection. Let me get it. Hold on. This is from the Wikipedia. I had another joint on him, but I can't find the clip. But peep this. So remember, on one hand, you got the Romans basically caught in this disparaging action was happening so they can maintain power. And then on the other hand, you got the Persians doing the same thing against the Romans, but for their own benefit. Salman Farsi. Now remember, Farsi is Persian. That's the language that the Persians speak. If y'all don't know, it's called Farsi. Salman Farsi was the Persian religious scholar, one of the companions of Muhammad. As a practicing Zoroastrian, that was the other issue between the Scythian Parthians and the Sassanid Parthians. The Zoroastrian ones, that's the Sassanids. They wanted that to be the state religion. You see what I'm saying? They wanted Zoroaster to be the practicing state religion, but the Parthians, they wasn't with that. They was going back to the older ones. So that caused even more issues. So look what homie did. As practicing Zoroastrian, he dedicated much of his early life to studying to become a magus. Okay, so that means that the prophet of Muhammad, the dude that brought him on and was his advisor and all that, was a practicing wizard. All right? That's what a magus is, a wizard, a magician. After which, he began traveling extensively through Western Asia to engage in constructive dialogue with non-Zoroastrian groups. His quest eventually prompted his conversion to Christianity and later his conversion to Islam, which occurred after he met and befriended Muhammad at the city of Yathrib. He was a prominent non-Arab companion, one of Muhammad's closest friends. Muhammad had once stated to a gathering of his followers that he regarded Salman as part of his family. In meetings with other companions, he is often referred to as Kunya Abu Abdullah. So what this says is that this Zoroastrian wizard, this Zoroastrian priest wizard who used mushrooms, because that's Zoroastrians use mushrooms, and they use other type of stuff like that, right? They also were, that's what I was going to say. The Scythian Parthians, right? These are the ones that came from the Western steppes, the dark Tartar types that came from the Western steppes of all of that and came down into it, right? Into what is now Iran, Persia. They were Mithraists. That's another thing. So they were Mithraists. So they was not trying to flip to Zoroaster. Because see, under the Persian rule, when Persia was ruling the world, remember, they're the ones that built up everybody's temples. So they knew what everybody's religion was going to be about. So they knew how they could influence everybody's religion. So they took their greatest priests to be the ones to help influence how all these minor religions would basically come into being. Thus, that's why you could have Salman right here, who was a practicing Zoroastrian, wound up after he becomes the highest magician in the order. He then travels with Asia, and then he becomes a Christian. Then he becomes a Muslim to an illiterate, to a illiterate who was practicing all types of paganism or whatever, and then got him to the point. They also said there was times when angels would come, right, and build with him and Salman, and nobody else could come through. They was all dressed in white and green. Who you think that was? That was the Parthenians, because they were also part of the night cavalry that helped put Homie back in position in Mecca. And then what happened? After that, you get the fall of both Mecca, you get the fall of both the Roman Empire and the Persian Empire. But then what flowers in its place? The Moorish Empire. Because the Moors had already went back up into old Europa and all of that. And helped reestablish what was going to be. So they had already established themselves from the fiction, but we used the same way these niggas was using it, used the thing that was present in the day as the couch for what was left of the civilization. In Jewish theology, Yahweh came to the dominant extension of the ancient pantheon, originating as a local tribal volcano and storm god to become god of the cosmos. So it started as an earth god, just like an ancient so-called Egyptian cosmogony. The sky god is the female. The earth god is the male, right? But then, like I said, from the Salman Farsi side, we get the Farnese. We ultimately get the Medicis, and then they get the Farneses, and then get the Orsinis, and then get the Selassies. You see what I'm saying? Because they all come from the same line. It's the same Roman bullshit, Roman/Persian Flavian influence thing, because they were the ones that were agitating both of these so-called burgeoning religions to pop off. Christianity and Islam. Ask yourself, how is it that Peter, who murdered Christians, murdered them, burned them, did all of this, he becomes the head of the Christian church and the so-called seven churches that would allow him basically to dictate what became the canon books of the Bible? Like, what's up? Like how that work? How is the niggas that killed the righteous dudes always the ones that wind up saying who could do what? How does that make sense? The bottom line is the singularity came into existence, and after the last main event, we put a stranglehold on the reality and brought wisdom and culture back into the third dimensional world, and through agriculture and diet started to redistribute how the world itself was functioning from the perspective of an actual empire, like a global type kingdom, like what we say. But it was practicing this on multi-dimensional levels at the same time. So the more the bells and the more we had the fountains and all of that type of stuff popping, the more easier it was for us to regulate who was coming in and out of the reality, what we was incarnating, what we was bringing through these portals, how we was activating them. It was more control. Once we started falling from our noble nature and getting caught up in how to maintain the the auspices of reality and not the foundation, the root of it, you see, this is when we start slowing down. And when we start slowing down, these things start speeding up. And because we knew who and what the original peoples already was, because we was in every incarnation of the reality, no matter who, we was always here. Like Japanese people are closer to Korean and Turkish people than they are Chinese people, because you have different Turkic in certain groups. But the group that the Japanese come from is a group of people called the Yoman, right? And these are dark-skinned Asiatics. You understand? Which explains why and Japan was such an empire towards the end. You know what I'm saying? But all of that gets switched up because, like I said, we be getting caught up in who's running the shit now and what color they are now. When what color they are now has nothing to do with that, because 80% of the white folk you see out here now with that color is passing. You think they white, they not white. They just look like that, but you think they is, because we have been reduced, like I said, to a colorable title where we are using trademark terms that have been trademarked not even from like time immemorial, like from this in the last 20 years. In the last 20 years, niggas is making up names to get everybody to call them by and shit. Trademark it so that way when you use it, they can get some bread off of it. This is the new hustle. That's why the prophet said, be careful, Moors. If not, you'll be surprised your own brothers be the one throwing you back in slavery. This is how they doing it. Getting you to refer yourself as some other shit that somebody else got the trademark on. So there was a study that was done, and they found that the last that what the Inquisition was actually doing was looking for those people or those souls that were incarnating with that energy to be able to thwart what their power was, which is what we see in all of these movies, which is why it's always the same thing. They were getting rid of as many people as possible. So we see those stories about the catacombs in Europe, and all of the thousands of bones that line, and they made all of these different sculptures and all that shit with. That's who all of these people were. People like me and you that was just born with certain energy and certain understanding of reality that couldn't be quantified or qualified by an individual or a specific sect or group. And those people, like I said, were a threat to the building of the temple. And part of their ritual is to build this goddamn temple and get as many souls and give as many souls to the dragon as possible, because they are acting as the Christ. So when we look at this list of kings, right? You look at this list of kings from the Inca, how we talked about how the Inca married into the Holy Roman Empire. It was the Holy Roman Empire people that were the ones that didn't have a lot of the psychic energy, right? Because again, they're also affected they're descended from this new joined Israel of that old bloodline trying to mix with the new. You know what I'm saying? So yes, Yahweh is that, but now they're saying they trying to move away from that and move into now the covenant. Now they become Christian. See what I'm saying? But by the time they become Christian, the Roman Catholic Church has already now ordained and created what Christianity, Ianity being a word that means lack of substance by itself. So they take the divine nature of man and then try to put Ianity with it, so that way they now can control it and bring it right back under the church. That's what they killed them to do in the first place. But see, the issue with us is that we were the inheritors of that, right? So like this sign here on the left, you'll see on the Alfa Romero car. I've seen that before, right? The logo for the Alfa Romero, right? Hold up. That symbol is called the Viscontio. Okay, it's an old image. You'll find images of this, not in this version, but you'll find a version of this in ancient Mexico. You know what I mean? It also represents two things. It has also the cross of Saint George in it. Like when you look at the Romero image, it has the cross of Saint George in it, who's representing the Dragon Slayer and those who basically took control of the Naga bloodline. So again, it's called the Visconti. It's called the Visconti Biscione, right? So it was a coat of arms. Now, in the middle is the list of the Inca kings, right? Now, these two white people you see here, these represent the two bookends, if you will, the clones, the stewards, the decoys who was basically there to get rid of the descendants of him. This right here represent Yeshua as the king, right, of the world during the millennial reign again of the Moors. Then under this now represent all of the kings of the so-called Inca that were ruling, right, in their stead in the name of the great king, who again they're saying is Yeshua, who is the king of the world that helped usher in what we call the golden age of the Moors, right? And then up until here, right, this is where now Charles, who is this nigga right here on the left hand side, this is another image of him. He had what they call the Habsburg jaw, the big mandible jaw. He becomes the first one from Europe now to marry into the Inca throne, into the Inca line. And then from there now, the throne between God, right, the head, going all the way now to the divine right of when he marries in, because he marries Adathobule's daughter, I believe. And then they have a son. They have a son and a daughter. And then their son and daughter basically go on to continue all the way up to here. This right here, I believe, is supposed to be the Sanye, right here. And then from here on, you see it starts to get lighter. You see? Because now they're going along with the decoy situation, the blood thinning and all that shit. But that's why at the top of these things, you'll see the image of Christ at the top, and then you see all of the kings under. Because that Christ represent, again, the time that the Moors took over and that millennial reign started. We don't really know how long it lasted. They say it lasted until 1492. But if they say it started at 711, that's really just when they went into Spain. Technically, if you really want to start it, you got to start it going all the way back to whenever they consecrated, came up with the formula to get rid of them after what happened with the so-called death. There's a collective energy of, again, the people is what then brought forth this reign. And then now all over the world, you see people dressing like the Moors, i.e. the prophets, to be able to separate themselves from the other nation's habit. That's why the Moors were so vicious and so on point about how they dress and how they was not going to give up their habit to look like anybody else. And why the Moors were seen as the most pious and most devout. Because the Moors, again, we're dealing with what the shit is, not what we want it to be. Because we only want it to be what it actually is. See what I'm saying? Right. 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 him, Bookman, Makandal, even the other one, I forget the other one. All of them. See, the Moors have frequently been called the Puritans of Islam, whereas most educated Turks and many Persians, Egypts, and Indo-Mohammedans have adopted European style of dress. Not a single Moor living within the boundaries of his own country has laid aside his cloak-like Arab jalabila in the streets of Tangier, in the city most infested with Christians. See what I'm saying? An inferred transatlantic slave trade patterns of 500 BC until 79 BC in the conquest of Egypt by Darius I. In 1525 BC, the successive rise of the Greek Roman empires effectively closed the eastern Mediterranean to Carthaginian shipping. Carthage retaliated by closing the Straits of Gibraltar, to all European mariners. Under the guise of supposed Spanish and North African trade, Carthaginian merchants exploited the North African resources, bringing to Cadiz the copper of the Celtic Iberian settlements of North America, meaning Moors, because the Celts, the Picts, the Britons, all of them niggas was actually, like I said, part of this wave, part of that wave that wound up after those wars to maintain what was left of Phoenicia. Right. Then this book, you should get this book, Islam in the West, the Moriscos by Anwar G. Chejni. Because then at the end, when he reads the prophet of the third prophecy of Muhammad, it basically says that all of the Moors of Andalusia would receive the land again and bring back to paradise. Mm-hmm. Exactly. So that's why Haiti was so important in the establishment of it, and why it could establish and be the actual first republic to then be followed by the United States. You know what I mean? And its power to basically go into all of South America and help free all of those republics. How you think they was able to do that? Because again, Desanier was representing all of the empires of South America, or the Inca, or whoever that was moving up. Which explains why we see images, like I said, like this of Toussaint with the cherry red fez on. But he's supposed to be Christian. You know what I mean? But during this time, again, it wasn't about whether you was Christian or Muslim, or that, because the Christians and the Muslim call Allah the same name. You know what I'm saying? Same way you got Christians who just keep calling Jesus regardless of what you tell them about Yeshua. Allah exists in the heart, so it know who you talking about. Which one you talk about when you say it, especially when you know the difference. This is why, again, through the Flavian influences, this is why things like women and the consumption of men and pedophilia and a lot of this stuff became staples within a lot of these religions, because they were influenced by the most decadent and messed up of individuals, men in particular. You know, a lot of them inbred. So a lot of the Roman customs that you see them go through, a lot of them did that, and that brought them in conflict against the Moabitic nations that was with all of that shit. But like I said, we might have been Hebrews in a sense by blood, whereas my moms might have been part of the tribe of Benjamin, and I might be in part of the tribe of Judah. But then we might be living in land that was under the jurisdiction of Dan, and they had beef with them. So then they would find out, and then they would make life hard for you, or make you. You see what I'm saying? So it's the same shit happening now. So when they talk about the Negro Indians in rebellion, these are the Moors. You know what I'm saying? Because Negro is a fiction, Indian is a fiction. The Chickasaw Nation, when they talk about all of this going on, by the time they were calling them Chickasaw, Choctaws, Creeks, and all of that, they had already been corporatized. And they had already started to split them in between two. Between the original clans and the original tribes that was already here, who had control of the mounds and the cities because they came from them, from time immemorial, connected all the way to the unification between the North and the South, right? Meaning the Northern Europe hemisphere and then the South American hemisphere, through this union, right, of Carlos Quintos, which then led to everything that happened. And then through there now, through that line, the German line, the black German line, they didn't have that access connection. So once they came in and they started merging, that started to make the gene within us that had that go dormant. You see what I'm saying? And then the European side to become more thing, because now the Inquisition is getting rid of everybody else that has that memory of the old world and how it went, as well as connections historically, both presently and then fourth dimensionally through astral traveling, through dreams, through all of the magic that the Moors and stuff had at that time. They had to get rid of all of that and make all of that dormant. So they shut down the Moors internationally, politically, then shut them down politically, then shut them down materially, then shut them down nationally, then shut them down personally. You see what I'm saying? So that way they could help institute goddess worship and all this other type of stuff to make us believe then that we are, somehow that there was a time where women was on the planet by themselves and they were producing babies and stuff by themselves and all of that. So again, the way that you shut all of that down is just with this right here. If parthenogenesis was a form of asexual reproduction, while the egg develops into an orgasm without fertilization, it is not naturally possible in humans for these reasons. The first reason is the fact that, again, chromosomal requirements are required to make the plasmoid real. So what that means is that in order for you to be a full human being, you have to have 23 chromosomes coming from sperm and 23 coming from the egg, creating the full set of 46. Because 6 and 4 make 10. 10 is cipher completion. The circle, the cipher, represents time, eternal. So the pyramid represent the energy. The circle represent time. The square represent physical reality. So remember Squid Game, some people had the circle on their face, some people had the triangle, some people had the square. This is what all of this is materially representing. So that means then if a woman was to be able to create a whole being by theirself, that means that they would be providing the 23 chromosomes, right, on both ends, which then means that that child, whatever that is not a full human. You understand? So this is another way that they try to trick women through their ego into believing that there's some sort of goddess from a time immemorial, when the goddess that they're trying to pattern you after were demons, were fallen entities that had no spiritual access outside of what was sacrificed unto them to draw energy from the toroidal field of the decay of whatever the sacrifice was. And this is what they wanted women to paint themselves after. This is what they want women to do, that because this was part of the Roman tradition. You see, this is also why they extract women, the true woman, from any aspect of power in a lot of these books. Like, you know how many times a woman is mentioned in the Quran? You know how many times they mention a woman in the Quran? First of all, do you know what woman is mentioned in the Quran? Yeah, you could say Khadijah, you could say Muhammad's wife, but not really. No. The only woman married that mentioned in the Quran is Mary. Like that is Mary. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, that's it. So listen to what I'm saying. The only woman is mentioned in Mary. So if you was to ask an average everyday, let's say, Muslim, what was Adam's wife name, Mary? A lot of them can't tell you. They don't know what Adam's wife name was because she not mentioned in that. And remember, they created a system where nobody read nothing but that. So this is the issue. You know what I'm saying? With all of this stuff. It always boils back down to what people are being told, what's being excluded from them, and how they're going to keep them from figuring it out. Exactly. Yeah. So while parthenogenesis is observed in some plants and insects and reptiles, the complexity of human reproduction and development make it naturally impossible. You understand? It's impossible. So when these dudes, these goddess worshippers, these types of dudes be coming out here and they be talking to you about how the woman was able to do this and do that, and when she was God and how she was creating and she could only create this and that, like, you got to really understand that they talk about stuff that physically, even if it did happen and she was able to do that, whatever she did produce from that, from that, would not be a human the way you and I would be. It would be genetically impossible for it to do that, because to do that, our creator made it so that way we got to work together. Now that sounds like something that a selfless God would do. You know what I mean? A selfless God would create a circumstance by which we would have to work together to be able to have a baby, instead of putting it all on one person, the way this false God has done to the woman. You know what I'm saying? All trying to get her to be a Shira, or whatever demon, whatever goddess they believe that they supposed to be, because they have been given this divine femininity and life wouldn't exist without them, and all of this ego driven drivel that has led to generations of women growing up and dying alone, generations of children being denied elements of being raised with a father because men don't matter. The only thing that matters about the man is how much he paying, what he buying, and what he gonna leave when he die. You know, we're a better culture than that. We're supposed to be more evolved than that as a people, where we look beyond our poor choices to that which can be better for all of us. However, morality and chivalry and honor and these things, they have been stricken from our people. You know what I'm saying? So they're woefully ignorant of anything outside of that. Loyalty is not something that you even hear in the modern male or female vocabulary. So again, these are the issues that we will find as Moorish Americans as we carve out our own identity outside of that which has been thrust upon us by people who themselves are still under the same Persian, Greco-Roman, Greek, Hellenistic bullshit, Babylonian bullshit that has kept our people ignorant. These are some books you can get on the subjects. If you can find them, they're pretty good. Yeah. So Islam, Christianity, all come out of so-called Judaism. But Judaism itself has nothing to do with Zionism. Zionism is conflated with Judaism. You see what I'm saying? So that way, when you say I'm anti-Zionist, they say that you're anti-Jewish. But the same Jews that you're saying they're anti aren't Semitic. You see what I'm saying? Because to be Semitic, you have to be of the Afro-Asiatic groups, such as the Moabites, Hittite, all of them, and all of them was Asiatics, including the so-called Israelites and all of that. So as you see, their whole story, once you start really going through it, just falls apart. Because like I said, we're in the era of the qubit now, where two probability matrices can exist simultaneously at the same time, so long as they're not observed. Once they're observed, they cease their individual motion. So that means the best things that you do for yourself and your family is the stuff that you leave offline, the stuff that goes out that's unseen. See? Because then the free radicals within that exercise, that action, have the ability to manifest what you want free of any observable interference. See, coming from a third dimensional space. You understand what I'm saying? Let these people argue about who and what they are, who and what these people who none of us knew before we got conscious, what they are and what they represent. You don't know. We can only put it by what it is that we're understanding ourselves to be, because in the end, all of this that we're reading about has already happened. Therefore, the people that we place a lot of energy into aren't even physically here. On your screen, on your left side, is the painting of Muhammad II, or Mehmet II, peace be upon him, coming into Constantinople, showing and proving that it was a Moorish occupation of what came into what eventually became known as the Sultanate of Rome. Because that's what the Turkish Empire was actually called, the Sultanate of Rome. One of those sultans of Rome was King George III, whom I showed the letter written from the Emir of Cordoba, giving him respect. And then on the left-hand side, this is called the expulsion. This is a painting about the expulsion of the Moors. So this is us going from California, the first Trail of Tears, going from California to wherever else we went. Anybody have any questions? Anybody else have any questions? I appreciate it. So again, I appreciate you guys coming through, hearing me out with this. When I find out the name of that dude's thing on Flavius, I'll post it in the next description because it was pretty good. But yeah, the Flavian Roman cycle that heavily influenced the rise of what we call the religions of Islam, and the Roman influenced Christianity, by far. So definitely please check out, if you haven't already, check out the ADOT app. Let everybody know that it's up there. If you haven't already, definitely check it out. It's on Google Play and Apple Store. Also, if you haven't already, please check out, www.aseertheducateers.com. That's my hub for a lot of my links and stuff that you can check out there if you haven't already. definitely, if you haven't already. I appreciate you coming through. I remember in the old class you did stating that armed women were so pure that they could get pregnant just from laying in the sun. Yeah, yeah. When I was doing the knowledge on solar galactic births, the element of purity, that's why everybody wanted virgins and stuff like that, you know? But as I start to do the knowledge in that, I think that the ability to do that was most likely possible from a higher dimensional perspective. So I don't even think that we was physically, how you say, in the same type of bodies that we're in now when stuff like that was happening. But once we entered into these types of bodies and how they actualize light and slow down photons and shit, that's when I think a lot of it came to bear with us not being able to deal with that, and the whole idea of living with limitation and rising above limitation now becomes our struggle here. Whereas in a higher dimension, it probably solar galactic births, for instance, probably could manifest, I think, but not in this one, you know, not in this one. So yeah, if you haven't also, please check out CordobaOrganics.com. And if so, definitely check out www.darsco418.com if you haven't gotten a copy of the Darsco 418 as yet. Definitely do so. I greatly appreciate it. Or at least pass the word on and let everybody know. I'm in Toledo. Any books, literature, or lectures available on the magic roots of Toledo? Um, um, I know Randolph spent a lot of time in Toledo. Um, None I could think of thus far outside of, the works of C.M. Bay. He spent a lot of time uh, in that region. Also, there's more pyramids and shit like that buried in all that, because that Toledo is the original Toledo. The Toledo over there, the Kingdom of Toledo was over here. The fake Toledo wound up over there after World War II, after they rezoned and redistributed everything. So there's that as well. Anybody have any other questions? Islam. So again, thank you guys for coming through. Thank you for the $30 to via Cash App, money sign capital DS418.com, or via PayPal, duketears@gmail.com. I definitely appreciate you guys coming through. I hope it was clear. If not, if you have any suggestions, you could always email me, let me know. Inshallah. And yeah, man, just know at the root of it, all of the stuff that we naturally are, they got to symbolically create an actual pageant in real life, or some sort of version in real life that they could actually physically bring you into the pageantry of, to get you to disassociate yourself from the fact that this whole Temple of Solomon you walking in is nowhere as near and more intricate as the physical arm, leg, arm, body that you have manifested into. No way. No matter how beautiful and everything it is, if you didn't have a body, no matter how beautiful it was, if you didn't have eyes, you wouldn't be able to take in all of that. And everything that you've already taken in through the eye socket is already gone. So yeah. You can go to Amazon. I'm reaching out to some of his people about that, but I also have some on PDF. So you can hit me up at houseofl@hotmail.com, and we can build on that. All right. So again, I give thanks to everybody coming through once again. And if you have any other questions about whatever, you could always hit me up at houseofl@hotmail.com, and we can, take it from there. All right. Till again, Islam. In ruina, Roma Moris, Braconium Alut Laudibus, Pax et Amor, long live the empire. Peace and honors to the Prophet and his temple, all of the Moors, all of the Muslims. Love and light to y'all. All right? Peace.